My nephew was choked by his own brother, stole his Christmas gift and got grounded for it. Then I found out why he snapped and had to choose between family or justice. So, here's what happened. I'm posting this from my girlfriend's account because I don't have one. Just wanted to clear that up in case anyone gets confused. Okay, so let me tell you about my family. I'm 31, and I have a brother who's 40. He has two sons, Jack, who's 16, and James, who's 13. Jack was born when my brother was still in college. Back then, he didn't want kids, but life happens, right? Him and Jack's mom were struggling to balance school and parenting. Thankfully, our parents helped out a lot, and I pitched in too whenever I could. Eventually, my brother finished school, got a job, and married Jack's mom. A few years later, James came along. Here's where things get messy. My brother and his wife treated the two boys completely differently. They spoiled James like crazy. Expensive toys, fancy clothes, all the snacks he wanted, you name it. Whenever someone said something, they'd say, "James is our planned child. He deserves it." Meanwhile, Jack got the short end of the stick. They barely paid attention to him. And the worst part? Jack never complained. Not once. He just smiled and seemed happy as long as James was happy. But James wasn't exactly a ray of sunshine. He grew up spoiled and entitled. If Jack ever got something nice, James would demand the same, or better. Over time, things got worse. James started blaming Jack for stuff he did himself, and their parents always believed him. Jack just took it. Year after year, I saw the light in his eyes dimming. It broke my heart. Fast forward to this Christmas. I decided to buy both boys a Nintendo Switch. Jack had been wanting one for years, and when he opened his gift, he almost cried. He hugged me tight and thanked me over and over. James, on the other hand, threw a fit. He yelled, "I wanted a PS5, not this," and tossed it aside. Honestly, I didn't care. I did my part. What he did with his gift wasn't my problem. A few days later, Jack showed up at my door crying. He was shaking and looked like he'd been through hell. I calmed him down and asked what happened. Turns out, James couldn't stand seeing Jack enjoy his new console. So, he broke his own Switch and lied to their mom, saying Jack did it. Their mom believed him without question. She took Jack's console, gave it to James, and grounded Jack. That was the last straw for Jack. All those years of unfair treatment boiled over. In a moment of rage, he grabbed James by the neck and started choking him. He said he didn't know what came over him. He just snapped. His mom screamed and tried to pull him off, but Jack kept yelling at James to tell the truth. Finally, James admitted he lied. Jack let go, and James was left gasping for air. Then Jack ran straight to my apartment. Later, my brother called me, asking me to send Jack home because he had a lot to answer for. Jack wanted to go back and face the consequences alone, but I went with him. When we got there, James looked terrified. He'd never faced consequences before, and Jack's anger scared him. My brother started yelling at Jack, but I stepped in. I turned to James and asked him why he broke his own console. At first, he stayed quiet, but when I pushed, he finally admitted it. Jack was having too much fun, and it made him mad. His mom tried to defend him, saying, "He's just a kid," but I shut her down. I sent Jack outside to wait in my car, then I confronted my brother. I told him everything, how he neglected Jack, how he spoiled James into being a selfish brat. My brother just listened. For once, he didn't argue. His wife tried to interrupt, but he stopped her. I think reality finally hit him. I told them if they didn't want Jack, I'd take him in. Then I left with Jack. Now, he's staying with me. His mom keeps calling, accusing me of being cruel to James and meddling in their family business. She even accused me of favoring Jack. I haven't replied. My brother hasn't said anything yet. Maybe he's thinking about what I said. For now, Jack is safe with me. He's studying, playing games, and just being a regular kid. If his parents don't want him back, I'll support him until he can stand on his own 2 feet. Update 1. It's been a couple of weeks since Jack moved in with me, and honestly, it's been eye-opening. Not just for me, but I think for him too. At first, he was quiet. Like, really quiet. He'd sit on the couch staring at the wall or fidget with his hands when he thought I wasn't looking. It was like he didn't know how to exist without someone breathing down his neck or waiting for him to mess up. But slowly, he started opening up. We've had some long talks, and let me tell you, this kid has been carrying so much weight on his shoulders for years. Every time he tells me something new about his life back home, it makes my blood boil all over again. Jack told me more about what it was like growing up in that house. He said James would constantly compare their stuff, clothes, grades, even the food on their plates, and if Jack ever got something better, James would throw a tantrum until their parents gave him something better too. It wasn't just material things either. If Jack got praised by a teacher or did well in sports, James would find a way to sabotage it. Once, Jack made the school basketball team, and James accidentally spilled paint thinner on his sneakers, ruining them before an important game. Their parents never questioned it. They just bought James new shoes as a reward for being honest. The worst part? Jack internalized all of it. He started believing he didn't deserve anything good because he was the unplanned kid. He stopped trying in school, stopped playing sports, stopped doing anything that might draw attention to himself. He said he figured if he stayed invisible, maybe they'd leave him alone. That broke my heart. Here's this smart, talented kid who loves art and video games and science, and he spent years shrinking himself to avoid conflict. It pisses me off thinking about how much potential he wasted because of their neglect. Living with me has been an adjustment for both of us. I'm not exactly dad material, I don't know the first thing about raising a teenager, but we're figuring it out together. The first few nights were rough. Jack kept asking if I was sure it was okay for him to stay here, like he expected me to change my mind and kick him out. I kept reassuring him, but I could tell he didn't fully believe me. Then one night, I caught him sneaking into the kitchen to clean up after dinner. When I asked why he was doing it, he said, "I don't want to bother you." That hit hard. This kid has been conditioned to think he's a burden. So now, whenever he does something helpful around the apartment, I make a big deal out of thanking him. Little things, you know? Like, "Hey, thanks for unloading the dishwasher," or "You mowed the lawn?" Awesome. At first, he looked confused, like he didn't know how to respond. But now, he smiles. It's small, but it's progress. School's another story. Jack's grades aren't great, not because he's dumb, but because he hasn't had anyone pushing him to do better. His teachers have noticed the change though. Apparently, he's participating more in class and turning in assignments on time. One of his teachers even called me to say how proud she is of him. I told Jack about it later, and he shrugged it off like it wasn't a big deal. But I saw the way his face lit up when I mentioned it. He's starting to realize he's capable of more than he thought. As for James and his parents, they haven't given up yet. His mom still texts me daily, accusing me of brainwashing Jack and turning him against them. She says things like, "You're poisoning his mind against his own family, or he belongs with us, not you." Honestly, it's exhausting. I don't respond anymore. My brother, on the other hand, has gone radio silent. No calls, no texts, nothing. Part of me wonders if he's finally realizing how messed up things were, but I'm not holding my breath. People like that rarely change unless they're forced to. James is a different story. From what Jack tells me, he's acting out even more now that Jack isn't around to blame for everything. Apparently, he trashed his room and refused to go to school for a week. Their mom caved, of course, and bought him a new gaming PC to cheer him up. Meanwhile, Jack is using the same old laptop I gave him when he moved in. Go figure. The irony doesn't escape me. The spoiled kid gets rewarded for throwing a tantrum, while the responsible one gets punished for existing. Classic. Still, I can't help but feel guilty sometimes. Not for taking Jack in. That was the right thing to do. But for not stepping in sooner. Looking back, I see all the signs I missed. The way Jack would always hang back during family gatherings, the way he avoided talking about his life at home, the way he flinched whenever someone raised their voice near him. I should have done something earlier. Maybe if I had, things wouldn't have gotten this bad. But dwelling on the past won't fix anything. What matters now is making sure Jack knows he's safe here. That he's valued. That he doesn't have to shrink himself to fit into someone else's expectations. He's starting to believe it, little by little. Last weekend, we went to a comic book store, and he picked out a graphic novel he liked. When we got home, he sat on the couch reading it, completely absorbed. For the first time in years, he looked happy. Really happy. Not the fake smile he used to wear to keep the peace, but genuine happiness. It's moments like that that remind me why I'm doing this. Of course, there are challenges. Jack still struggles with self-doubt. Sometimes, he'll apologize for the smallest things, like borrowing a pen or eating the last slice of pizza. And there are days when he seems overwhelmed by everything. He'll retreat into himself and barely say a word. But we're working through it. Therapy helps. I found a counselor who specializes in teens, and Jack's been seeing her once a week. At first, he was hesitant, but now he actually looks forward to their sessions. He says she gets it, which is huge coming from him. I've also been teaching him practical stuff, things most kids learn from their parents. How to budget, how to cook basic meals, how to file taxes. Okay, maybe that one's a bit advanced, but hey, it's good to be prepared. He's a quick learner, and it feels good knowing I'm equipping him with skills he'll need later in life. Plus, it gives us something to bond over. Cooking spaghetti together might not sound like much, but for us, it's progress. Honestly, I don't know what the future holds. Will Jack's parents come around? Probably not. Will James grow out of being a brat? Maybe, but I wouldn't bet on it. All I can do is focus on the present and make sure Jack knows he has someone in his corner. Someone who believes in him. Someone who sees him for who he really is. A kind, creative, resilient kid who deserves so much more than he's been given. And yeah, it's tough. There are days when I feel completely out of my depth. But then I look at Jack, and I remember why I'm doing this. Because every kid deserves a chance to shine. And if his own family won't give him that, then damn it, I will. Update 2. It's been a few more weeks since my last update, and things have shifted in ways I didn't expect. Jack's settling in better than I thought he would, but that doesn't mean it's all smooth sailing. There are still moments when the cracks show, when the weight of everything he's been through bubbles to the surface. And honestly, it's hard not to feel angry on his behalf. Like, how do people mess up their kids this badly without even realizing it? One thing that's become clear is how much Jack second guesses himself. He's gotten into the habit of asking permission for everything, no matter how small. Can I watch TV? Is it okay if I use your Wi-Fi? Do you mind if I borrow this charger? At first, I thought it was just him being polite, but now I realize it's deeper than that. He's so used to walking on eggshells at home that he doesn't know how to exist without seeking approval. So, I've started telling him straight up, you don't need to ask me for every little thing. This is your space too. It's taken time, but he's starting to loosen up. Little by little, he's learning to take up space instead of shrinking himself. School's been another area where I've seen growth. His grades are improving, not dramatically, but enough to make a difference. His math teacher pulled me aside after parent-teacher night, yeah, I went, and said Jack's participation has skyrocketed. Apparently, he's even volunteering answers now, which blew me away. When I told him about it later, he shrugged like it wasn't a big deal, but I could tell he was proud. It's moments like that that remind me how resilient this kid is. He spent years being told, directly or indirectly, that he's not good enough, yet here he is proving them wrong. But it's not all wins. There are still days when the old insecurities creep back in. A couple of weeks ago, we were hanging out, and he mentioned something James had said to him once, no one likes you because you're boring. That stuck with him, apparently. He said it so casually, like it didn't bother him, but I could see the way his hands trembled as he spoke. I wanted to punch a wall. Instead, I told him flat out, James is an idiot. You're not boring, you're thoughtful. There's a difference, he laughed, but I could tell it hit home. These little scars run deep, and they don't heal overnight. Speaking of James, his mom hasn't stopped texting me. Seriously, the woman won't let up. She keeps accusing me of turning Jack against them, saying things like, you're poisoning his mind, or he'll regret leaving us. It's exhausting. The worst part is, she genuinely believes her own nonsense. She sent me a voice note the other day ranting about how Jack owes them for raising him and how ungrateful he is. Ungrateful? Are you kidding me? This is the same kid who spent years bending over backward to avoid upsetting anyone, only to get nothing in return. I didn't respond to her message. I've learned that engaging just makes it worse, but it pissed me off all over again. My brother, meanwhile, remains MIA. No calls, no texts, nothing. I don't know if he's processing what I said or if he's decided to wash his hands of the whole situation. Either way, his silence speaks volumes. Honestly, I'm done waiting for him to step up. If he cared, he'd have reached out by now. Instead, he's leaving Jack to fend for himself, just like always. Some father, huh? On the flip side, Jack's relationship with James has taken a weird turn. From what Jack tells me, James has been acting out even more since he left. He's skipping school, breaking stuff around the house, and generally being a nightmare. Their mom, of course, blames Jack for abandoning James and making him act out. Classic victim blaming. Meanwhile, James hasn't tried to contact Jack once, not even a text to check in. Not that I expected him to, but still. It says a lot about the kind of person he's becoming. Living with Jack has taught me a lot about patience, and about myself. I never imagined I'd be in this position, playing pseudo-dad to a teenager. But here we are. We've fallen into a routine that works for both of us. Mornings are quiet, he gets ready for school while I make coffee. Afternoons are busier. He does homework, I handle work stuff. Evenings are our downtime. Sometimes we watch movies together, other times we just chill separately. It's simple, but it feels right. That's not to say there aren't challenges. Parenting, even unofficial parenting, is hard. There are days when I feel completely out of my depth. Like last week, when Jack came home upset because some classmates made fun of his clothes. He didn't cry or throw a fit, he just sat there staring at the floor, looking smaller than ever. I didn't know what to say at first, so I just sat next to him and listened. Eventually, he opened up about how embarrassed he felt wearing hand-me-downs while everyone else had brand new stuff. It killed me to hear that. So, the next day, we went shopping. Nothing fancy, just basics, but it meant a lot to him. For the first time, he got to pick out clothes that actually fit him, and that he liked. Seeing the smile on his face made it worth every penny. Therapy's been helping too. Jack talks about his sessions sometimes, though he's careful not to share too much. He says his counselor helps him untangle all the messy thoughts in his head, which sounds about right. One thing she suggested was journaling, so I bought him a notebook. At first, he was hesitant, but now he writes in it almost every night. He won't tell me what he writes, but I can tell it's helping him process everything. Progress isn't always loud, you know? Sometimes it's quiet, steady, and written in ink. I've also been teaching him life skills, stuff most teens learn from their parents. How to cook, how to manage money, how to stand up for himself. None of it's glamorous, but it's important. Last weekend, we tackled laundry together. Sounds boring, but for Jack, it was empowering. He kept joking about how he's officially adulting now, which made me laugh. Moments like that remind me why I'm doing this. Because every kid deserves someone who believes in them. Someone who sees their potential, even when they can't see it themselves. Still, there are moments when I wonder if I'm doing enough. Am I giving him the support he needs? Am I setting boundaries without being too strict? Am I preparing him for the real world without overwhelming him? These questions keep me up at night. But then I look at Jack, and I see how far he's come. He's smiling more, speaking up more, living more. And that gives me hope. Honestly, I don't know what the future holds. Will Jack's parents ever come around? Doubtful. Will James grow out of being a spoiled brat? Maybe, but I wouldn't bet on it. All I can do is focus on the present and make sure Jack knows he's safe here. That he's valued. That he matters. Because that's what he deserves. And if his own family won't give him that, then damn it, I will. Update 3. Alright, here's where things stand now. It's been months since Jack moved in with me, and honestly, it feels like we've both grown in ways neither of us expected. Living with him hasn't just changed his life, it's changed mine too. I went into this thinking I was doing the right thing by stepping up for my nephew, but I didn't realize how much he'd end up teaching me about resilience, patience, and what it means to truly care for someone. Jack's come a long way since those first few weeks. He's more confident now, not cocky or anything, but steady. He doesn't second guess himself as much, and he started standing up for what he wants. Like last week, he told me he wanted to join the school's art club. This is a kid who used to avoid extracurriculars because he didn't want to bother anyone, so hearing him say that felt like a win. He's even talking about applying to colleges next year, which blows my mind. A few months ago, he wouldn't have believed he was college material. Now? He's sketching out plans and researching programs. It's incredible to watch. School's still a work in progress, but he's doing better than ever. His teachers have noticed the change too. One of them, a history teacher, pulled me aside recently and said Jack's one of the most insightful students she's had in years. She mentioned how he connects ideas in ways most kids don't, and how he's always asking questions that push the class to think deeper. Hearing that made me proud in a way I didn't expect. This kid has so much potential, and it's finally starting to shine through. But it hasn't all been smooth sailing. There are still moments when the past catches up to him. A couple of weeks ago, he came home upset because some classmates teased him about being too serious. Apparently, they were joking around during group work, and when Jack stayed focused, they called him a buzzkill. He shrugged it off at first, but later that night, I found him sitting on the couch staring at nothing. When I asked if he was okay, he admitted he felt like he didn't fit in anywhere, that no matter what he did, people would find something wrong with him. It broke my heart. All I could do was sit with him and remind him that fitting in isn't the goal. Being true to yourself is. He nodded, but I know those kinds of doubts don't disappear overnight. As for James and his parents, well, nothing's really changed there. His mom still texts me occasionally, though less frequently now. Her messages are shorter, angrier, and full of accusations. She keeps saying Jack's ruining their family dynamic and that I'm brainwashing him. Honestly, I stopped reading her messages after a while. They're just noise at this point. My brother remains silent, which speaks volumes. If he cared, he'd have reached up by now. Instead, he's chosen to stay out of it, leaving Jack to figure things out on his own. Some father, huh? James, meanwhile, seems to be spiraling further. From what Jack tells me, he's gotten worse since Jack left. He's skipping school regularly, throwing tantrums, and generally acting like the world owes him something. Their mom, of course, blames Jack for abandoning James and making him act out. Classic victim blaming. Meanwhile, James hasn't tried to contact Jack once. Not a text, not a call, nothing. Not that I expected him to, but it says a lot about the kind of person he's becoming. Spoiled kids grow up to be selfish adults unless someone steps in to teach them accountability. Unfortunately, no one in that household seems willing to do that. Living with Jack has taught me a lot about myself. I never imagined I'd be in this position, playing pseudo-dad to a teenager, but here we are. We've fallen into a rhythm that works for both of us. Mornings are quiet, he gets ready for school while I make coffee. Afternoons are busier, he does homework, I handle work stuff. Evenings are our downtime. Sometimes we watch movies together, other times we just chill separately. It's simple, but it feels right. That's not to say it's easy. Parenting, even unofficial parenting, is hard. There are days when I feel completely out of my depth. Like last month, when Jack got into an argument with a friend over something stupid. He came home frustrated and vented to me about how unfair it was. I didn't know what to say at first, so I just listened. Eventually, he calmed down and realized he might have overreacted. Moments like that remind me how much trust he's placed in me. He could have shut me out, but instead, he let me in. That means a lot. Therapy's still helping him untangle all the messy thoughts in his head. He talks about his sessions sometimes, though he's careful not to share too much. One thing his counselor suggested was setting goals, small, achievable ones, to help him build confidence. So, we've started doing that together. Whether it's finishing a book, learning a new recipe, or practicing self-care, each goal gives him something to focus on. Watching him celebrate those little victories reminds me how far he's come. I've also been teaching him practical skills, things most teens learn from their parents. How to cook, how to manage money, how to advocate for himself. None of it's glamorous, but it's important. Last weekend, we tackled car maintenance together. Sounds boring, but for Jack, it was empowering. He kept joking about how he's officially adulting now, which made me laugh. Moments like that remind me why I'm doing this. Because every kid deserves someone who believes in them. Someone who sees their potential, even when they can't see it themselves. Honestly, I don't know what the future holds. Will Jack's parents ever come around? Doubtful. Will James grow out of being a spoiled brat? Maybe, but I wouldn't bet on it. All I can do is focus on the present and make sure Jack knows he's safe here. That he's valued. That he matters. Because that's what he deserves. And if his own family won't give him that, then damn it, I will. For now, Jack's thriving. He's happier, healthier, and more confident than he's ever been. And yeah, it's tough sometimes. There are days when I feel completely out of my depth, but seeing how far he's come makes it all worth it. Every smile, every laugh, Every moment of growth reminds me why I stepped up in the first place. Because family isn't just about blood. It's about showing up. It's about choosing to care, even when it's hard. And I choose Jack. Always.